The first sensation is the sound, a single teardrop falling into water, echoing through the void. There is nothing else. There's no sight, no scent, no feeling, only the lingering resonance of that teardrop, and then absolute nothingness. You are suspended in it, weightless, with no sense of up or down, just the overwhelming presence of emptiness. The void stretches and expands without definition, without boundaries. There is no horizon, no edge, only the vast, hollow sensation of infinite nothingness. The emptiness wraps around you, an abyss that swallows every thought, every whisper of who you are. It is a place that feels both eternal and fleeting, a contradiction that makes your mind reel, unable to grasp anything tangible in the emptiness. Then you feel movement. It begins slowly, barely perceptible, like the soft release of a held breath. You drift, gently at first, as if cradled in unseen arms, and the sense of motion begins to grow, drifting becoming more purposeful, the subtle tug pulling you forward. The pace starts to quicken, gradually, until you begin to sense that you are moving faster than before. The emptiness around you begins to blur slightly, and with each passing moment, the speed builds, steady and undeniable. And now you are aware that the pace is becoming more than just a gentle glide. It is accelerating. The drifting feeling shifts into something else, something more forceful. You realize you are being pulled faster, the sensation becoming urgent, pressing. You feel it in the pit of your stomach, the uneasy sensation of going too fast, the emptiness around you now shifting and flowing like a dark river, carrying you forward against your will. The realization grows, gnawing at the edges of your awareness. You are not just moving, you are hurtling. The sensation of speed is overwhelming. There is no longer any doubt you are going too fast. The emptiness becomes a blur, streaking past you in shades of darkness, as if the void itself is being torn apart by your movement. You feel weightless, yet the pull is unrelenting, dragging you faster and faster. There is a rising sense of inevitability, a certainty that you are hurtling toward something. Unable to stop, unable to slow down, the force pulling you feels almost alive, determined to deliver you to whatever lies ahead. The emptiness around you becomes a chaotic rush, and you are left with nothing but the raw, blinding sensation of speed and the growing dread of what is to come. Ahead, you see it, a wall in the void, impossible but undeniably there. It starts as a distant silhouette, an almost imperceptible shift in the nothingness, but it grows rapidly. The wall looms larger and larger, filling your entire field of vision, expanding until it feels as though it's the only thing that exists. The realization hits you. There is no escape, no turning away, only the inevitable collision. You brace yourself, screaming into the void. The ending is immediate. The impact comes like a sudden eruption, a force that shatters worlds. There is a moment of utter disintegration before your being fills the void as an expansion of it, like ink dropped in a glass of water. You shatter and spread across the wall, across space, across the entire endless void, and across time. You are dispersed across the ages, omnipresent. And then just as suddenly you are whole again, standing as if nothing happened in a place unlike any you've ever seen. The air is warm, almost sweet, and it carries the scent of something fresh, something alive. Colors swirl around you, gold, violet, and shimmering blue. Each seems to move and breathe. Everything feels vibrant, yet gentle, wrapping around you like a comforting embrace. This feels godly. The ground beneath your feet glows faintly, soft and warm, like embers hidden beneath a cool surface. Each step you take sends gentle ripples of light across it, and you can't help but feel you are treading on something sacred, something precious. Lights drift lazily around you, soft and playful, guiding you forward, though you have no idea where they want you to go. You take a deep breath, and there's a strange presence in the air, a subtle sensation of something ancient and powerful, filling your senses with a quiet reverence. It feels like the place itself is whispering to you, though the words remain just out of reach. Above, The sky is a mix of colors, lavender and rose, streaked with lines of light that shift and blend, neither dawn nor dusk, but something in between. In the distance, shapes begin to form, tall and delicate, shimmering faintly. They look almost like arches, and there's an invitation in their presence, something that makes you want to move closer, to see what lies beyond. Everything about this place seems to welcome you, urging you to explore, to step further into the unknown, even as a small voice in the back of your mind wonders what this place truly is. The arches come into clearer view as you approach. They seem impossibly tall, reaching toward the sky, their surfaces shimmering with an ethereal glow. They aren't static. They shift and change as they are made from liquid light, flowing and reforming into new patterns with each heartbeat. You reach out and touch one of the arches, and it feels cool and warm beneath your fingertips, a sensation that defies understanding, as though it's alive, aware of your presence. Passing beneath the first arch is like stepping into another world. The air changes, becoming thicker, almost tangible, and you feel a subtle resistance. The light shifts and the colors deepen, darkening to rich hues of indigo and amber, their brilliance softened by shades that dance at the edges of your vision. The arches form a path, each one more intricate than the last, leading you. The starbound familiar remains near your side. As you pass beneath the final arch, the landscape opens up before you, revealing a vast expanse bathed in golden light. The ground slopes gently downward to a wide pool, its surface shimmering like polished glass. The pool reflects the sky above, lavender, rose, and streaks of soft gold, and something else. Something moving beneath the surface, a shape that shifts and changes as you watch. The air around the pool is different, cooler, filled with a sense of innocence and vulnerability. You kneel at the edge, staring into the depths. The shape below you grows clearer. It moves with a grace that seems almost impossible, a figure made of light and shadow, swirling within the water, waiting for you. You feel an irresistible urge, a need to touch the surface, to make contact. Your fingers hover above the pool and time seems to stop. The colors around you grow deeper, more vivid. The world holds its breath. You lower your hand, and as your skin touches the water, warmth spreads through you, a comforting presence that seems to fill the emptiness inside. A shape beneath the water rises, breaking the surface without a sound, and for a moment it hovers there. A man, or something like a man, glowing softly, turning slowly in the air. He stops rotating and faces you directly, observing you. He then begins to slowly glide toward you across the water's surface, leaving no wake nor ripple as he does. The silence of this moment is profound. He quickly reaches you and stops. He's far larger than you thought when observing him from a distance. He hovers just above the water, looking down at you. His eyes are entirely golden, and his mouth has been sewn shut. He sinks impossibly, somehow fitting his entire being within the shallow water's edge a mere pace in front of you. He stops face to face with you, his large golden eyes staring into you, and you begin to feel weak, small. There is a scrutiny from the being that makes you feel the pain of failures that you can't recall experiencing. His hands rise from the water, and he suddenly forces his fingers between his lips, one hand pulling down as another pulls up. His skin begins to tear around the bindings in his mouth as golden ichor flows from the wounds he is creating. And when at last he has torn his mouth open, a long frog-like tongue unrolls from his mouth toward you, stopping mere inches from your face. On the end of his tongue is a blue crystal. The crystal seems to hold the essence of this place, the colors of the sky, the warmth of the ground, the gentle lights that drift around you. It calls to you, and without hesitation you reach out, your hands closing around it. The man retracts his tongue, closing his mouth. He continues to stare at you through his golden eyes as the ichor drips from his chin, and then he slowly recedes back into the water. The crystal glows in your hand, and the pool beneath it begins to change, the surface rippling in response to your presence. The air around you grows warmer, and the arches that led you here seem to shimmer, their forms shifting once again. The path behind you closes, and a new one opens ahead. The path that opened before you is unlike the arches and the light that you've passed through before. It feels older, more grounded, yet still filled with wonder. The ground beneath you has a slight grainy texture now, like soft sand, each footstep sinking slightly as you move. The air is different here. It has a cool crispness to it, tinged with a scent that reminds you of an approaching storm. As you move, you notice patterns in the ground, intricate etchings that whirl beneath a thin layer of sand, forming shapes that seem to tell a story, though the meaning eludes you. The patterns twist and converge, leading you toward what appears to be an entrance across a bridge of smooth and ancient stone. You cross the bridge and step through the stone archway, and a space opens before you, a vast hall illuminated by beams of golden light that fall from unseen places above. Columns stretch upward, their surfaces carved with depictions of figures, some humanoid, others impossible to fully comprehend. They seem to be in various states of transformation, changing from one form to the other, or perhaps transcending into something less tangible. The crystal in your hand feels warm, almost alive, as if it responds to the presence of these carvings. You sense that there is something important here. Moving deeper into the hall, you notice that the light seems to follow you, shifting as you move. The air grows warmer, and the scent of something floral mixing with hints of metals in a soft breeze stirs. Slowly you look down, noticing that the thin layer of sand that you had crossed earlier has begun to shift, moving of its own accord. The particles twist and spiral, creating new patterns, forming lines and symbols that radiate outward, connecting to the swirling designs etched into the floor. The symbols glow faintly, a soft blue light that pulses gently like a living thing drawing breath. The crystal in your hand responds, its warmth growing stronger, and you feel an undeniable pull, a need to follow where the symbols are leading. The lines snake across the floor, converging at a distant wall where another archway takes shape, emerging from the stone like a living entity. It is different than the others. It's larger and more ornate, its frame carved with interlocking patterns that seem to shimmer even in the dim light. The archway stands open, revealing only darkness beyond. You take a breath, the cool metallic hint still present in the air, and you step toward the archway. The silence of the hall seems to amplify your steps, and as you approach, the darkness beyond the arch seems to thicken, almost as though it resists your presence. You hesitate for just a moment before stepping through, feeling a subtle shift as you cross the threshold. The air here is different. It's denser, charged with an energy that makes the hair on your arms rise. Beyond the archway, you find yourself in a corridor, narrower and more confined than the vast hall. The walls curve slightly inward, creating an almost cocoon-like effect, and they're covered in more etched designs, now glowing softly, illuminating your path. The designs depict scenes that seem to be fragments of some forgotten lore. As you move along, you notice the figures etched into the stone, humanoid but with features that are otherworldly, elongated limbs, eyes like pools of starlight, and crowns formed from the swirling clouds. Each figure appears to be engaged in some sort of ritual, their hands raised to the sky, surrounded by arcs of light or elements that you cannot fully understand. One section of the wall shows a group of these beings gathered around a massive tree, its branches reaching upward. The leaves are drawn with intricate care, each one different, and they glow faintly, imbued with life. Beneath the tree, a river flows, its currents represented by winding lines that weave between the figures. There is something sacred in the way they are depicted, a reverence that speaks of an ancient connection to the natural world. Further along the corridor, another scene captures your attention. It shows a great city, not built of stone, but of light and mist. Towers rise, their forms shifting as you move, creating an illusion of movement with the carvings. The inhabitants of the city are depicted mid-motion. Some appear to be dancing, others in deep conversation, their expressions joyful, but there is a sense of fragility to it all. The city is on the verge of fading, its light too ethereal to last. The air has a faint chill, and with each breath, you feel the coolness settle in your lungs. The corridor seems alive, the walls shifting slightly. The crystal in your hand pulses steadily, the warmth contrasting with the chill around you. You run your fingers along the etched figures, feeling the texture beneath your fingertips, the grooves and raised sections smooth and cool. As you touch one of the carvings, a figure with wings spread wide, you feel a sudden jolt, an image flashing in your mind, a being soaring through the sky, its wings catching the light of 1,000 stars. The sensation is brief but powerful, leaving you breathless. The corridor seems endless, winding and turning in unexpected ways. The glowing lines on the walls grow brighter as you move, the light intensifying until it becomes almost blinding. You shield your eyes, but still you push forward, trusting the crystal's guidance. Suddenly, the corridor opens into a circular chamber. The walls are lined with tall mirrors, each one framed with intricate metalwork that shimmers in the dim light. The mirrors reflect the glow of the etchings, creating an almost endless illusion. You approach one of the mirrors, your reflection looking back at you, yet there is something different, a subtle distortion, a faint shimmer that seems to move independently of you. The crystal in your hand grows warmer still, and the light within it shifts, becoming a deep indigo. You watch as your reflection changes, your features blurring, twisting into something unrecognizable. The face in the mirror is no longer your own. It is elongated, eyes larger, and filled with a light that seems almost too bright to bear. There is an otherworldly beauty to this reflection, something that makes you want to look away, yet you cannot. The image shifts again, and you see wings, delicate and translucent like those of a dragonfly sprouting from your back. They flutter softly, and for a moment, you feel as though you could lift off the ground, carried by a breeze that does not exist. You blink and the vision fades, leaving only your own reflection staring back at you. The crystal's light dims, settling into a steady glow, and you take a step back, your heart pounding in your chest. The mirrors around you seem to hum with energy, the reflections shifting and moving, showing glimpses of possibilities, different versions of yourself. Some almost familiar, others so foreign they make your skin prickle with unease. At the center of the chamber, a platform rises from the ground. The pedestal itself is carved with intricate patterns that twist and weave. On it rests an object, shrouded in shadows, its form indistinct against the dim glow that surrounds it. You approach it cautiously, each step echoing softly off the chamber's tall walls. The crystal in your hand pulses softly, its warmth radiating up your arm. The shadows cling to the object, reluctant to reveal it, but with each step closer, they seem to pull back, parting like a curtain to unveil what lies beneath. As you draw nearer, you see it's a small, elaborate box, its surface adorned with the same patterns that mark the walls and floors. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The patterns shimmer as though traced with moonlight, their complexity impossible to fully grasp. And finally, you stand before it. The box seems to radiate energy, a subtle vibration that resonates with the crystal you hold. The connection between them is palpable, as if they share a history, a purpose that intertwines them across time and space. You reach out, your fingers brushing against the box, and a shiver runs through you, a sensation running up your arm like an electric current. The metal is cool to the touch, smooth yet textured. It feels as though the box itself is aware of you, reacting to your touch, adapting in response. You lift the box from the pedestal, and its unexpected weight makes you pause, a surprising heaviness for something so small. The lid is hinged, the mechanism smooth, and without thinking, you open it, the soft creak of metal echoing through the stillness of the chamber. Inside, the darkness recedes, revealing a single feather resting on a bed of dark velvet. The sight of it is arresting, and you feel an immediate compulsion, as though the feather has been waiting for you all this time. It is unlike any feather you have ever seen, long and slender, iridescent yet also opalescent, shimmering with hues of blues and greens and silvers and reds. It seems to glow with an inner light. As you hold it up to the light, it catches the glow of the etchings, reflecting it in a dazzling array of colors. A sudden breeze stirs the air, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. The mirrors around you shudder, their surface rippling like water, and you feel a pull, an urge to use the feather, though you don't know how or why. You close your eyes, holding the feather tightly, and a word forms in your mind, unbidden yet undeniable. It is not a word you recognize, nor one that you have ever heard before, yet it feels right, like it belongs to you. You speak the word aloud, your voice echoing on the chamber walls, and the effect is immediate. The mirrors shatter, not into shards, but into light, each fragment dissolving into a glow that fills the room. The lights whirl around you, lifting you off the ground, and you feel your body become weightless, as if all the heaviness you have carried has been stripped away, leaving you suspended in the air, embraced by the radiance. The feather glows brightly, the iridescent hues shifting and blending, each color more vivid than the last. The blues deepen into oceanic depths, greens flicker like sunlight through forest leaves, and silver glints like moonlight on the water. The colors merge and churn, forming patterns that are both chaotic and harmonious, an interplay of light that seems to dance across the walls of the chamber. The light grows brighter still, the colors intensifying until they converge into a brilliant white. It is blinding, filling every corner of the room, erasing the shadows and enveloping you completely. For a moment, there's nothing but light, a sensation of boundless energy, and then silence. The light fades, the feather disintegrating back into a fine mist that swirls around you before vanishing completely. You find yourself back on the ground, the mirrors gone, the chamber empty save for the pedestal. You feel as though you missed something, though you're unsure of what. You turn back toward the corridor, the path ahead still shrouded in shadow, but the crystal's light guides you, illuminating each step as you move forward, deeper into the unknown. The corridor stretches onward, and with every step, the silence around you seems to deepen. The air is thick, carrying a faint, earthy scent like damp stone. You pause to examine a section of the wall more closely, your fingers brushing lightly over the carvings. The stone is cool to the touch, and as your fingers trace the shapes, a story begins to unfold in your mind. You see a procession of figures, each one unique, some draped in flowing robes, others armored, their faces obscured by helmets or hoods. They carry objects in their hands, scrolls, orbs, and staffs, each radiating a light of its own, etched in vivid detail that seemed to glow faintly under the crystal's illumination. The procession seems to lead somewhere, and you find yourself drawn to follow their path. As you continue, the carvings grow larger, more intricate, spanning the height of the corridor walls. You see scenes of creation, great swirling clouds forming into stars, beings shaping worlds with their hands, mountains rising from the earth and oceans spilling forth. The artistry is breathtaking, each detail captured with precision, as if the stone itself holds the memory of these ancient acts of creation. The air around you changes subtly, the temperature cools, and a faint sound reaches your ears, almost like a whisper, but elusive. It's barely there. You strain to catch it, the sound slipping away before you can understand it. The crystal's glow brightens, as though urging you to move forward, and you continue on your journey, curiosity driving you deeper. And ahead, the corridor opens into an unexpected clearing, a vast open space with no walls to confine it. You find yourself in what seems to be an otherworldly grove. The ground beneath your feet is covered in a thick, moss-like carpet, soft and almost luminescent, glowing faintly under the crystal's light. Tall, twisted trees with shimmering bark rise from the moss, their branches stretching outward and interlocking to form a natural arch, much like the ones from before, but more organic. Hanging from the branches are objects, artifacts that catch the light, swaying in the gentle breeze. You continue exploring, moving from tree to tree, each artifact more intriguing than the last. A dagger with a blade so thin it seems to disappear when viewed from the side. A small vial filled with a shimmering substance that swirls and shifts as if alive, and a sphere that casts intricate patterns of light onto the mossy ground around it. Each item feels significant, as though it holds a story, a fragment of the past waiting to be uncovered. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, a mix of stone and patches of moss, and here and there are clusters of glowing crystals, their light reflecting off pools of still water that lie scattered across the floor. The reflections ripple gently, creating the illusion of countless stars shimmering just beneath the surface, an effect that takes your breath away. The grove feels alive, its beauty untouched by time, a place that has waited silently for your arrival. You step further into the grove, the familiar by your side, the gentle glow mingling with the ethereal light of the crystals. In the center of the grove stands a monolithic structure, a pillar of stone covered in carvings similar to those in the corridor, but far more intricate. The images tell a story depicting a journey across realms, figures ascending into light, surrounded by stars and dancing energies. You feel drawn to the pillar, its presence commanding, the energy radiating from it. The starbound familiar moves ahead of you, climbing onto the base of the pillar and curling around it, its glow growing more intense, illuminating the carvings. You approach, reaching out to touch the stone, and the moment your fingers make contact, the energy from the crystal surges, flowing through you and into the pillar. The carvings begin to shift, figures moving, the journey they depict continuing. The light from the familiar merges with the energies from the crystals, and the pillar responds, the stone warming beneath your hand. The figures on the pillar move in fluid grace, their forms shifting, ascending, showing you what lies ahead. You watch, mesmerized as the stone seems to come alive, the story unfolding before you. A path ahead leads upward, through the light and darkness, through realms that feel both familiar and foreign. The warmth of the crystal fades slightly, settling into a steady glow, and the carvings grow still once more. You step back, the starbound familiar leaping gracefully from the pillars to your side, its gaze meeting yours with an understanding that needs no words. Together, you turn away from the pillar, the path ahead now clear, illuminated by the gentle glow of the familiar. Suddenly, the ground beneath you gives way. The mossy earth shifts, crumbling beneath your feet. There is a moment of sheer panic, an instant where you grasp for stability, your fingers reaching out for something solid, but everything around you is giving way. Your footing vanishes too quickly, and before you can react, you are plunging into the darkness. The sensation of falling overwhelms you, gravity pulling you down with a relentless force, the wind rushing past your face. The starbound familiar leaps forward, its glow flickering like a desperate beacon trying to stay close, but it too is caught in the free fall, drawn with you into the unseen depths below. You land hard, the impact jarring your bones, knocking the air from your lungs. For a moment, pain flares through your body, and everything is disorienting, the world spinning as you try to get your bearings. Dust and loose stones rain down around you, filling the air with the scent of disturbed earth. Wincing at the sharp ache in your limbs. Gradually, your vision clears, and the familiar's glow strengthens, steadying itself as it hovers close to you. The soft radiance reveals your surroundings, a narrow stairwell hewn from the dark stone, leading deeper underground. The stone is rough, aged, the stairway carved into the earth long ago. The fall has brought you here, to a hidden path not easily accessible to those who tread the upper caverns, a secret passageway that seems to beckon you further. You slowly push yourself to your feet, your legs trembling from the fall. You brush the dirt and small pebbles from your clothes, wincing at the bruises that you can already feel forming beneath your skin. The stairwell looms before you, descending into darkness that feels almost alive, watching and waiting. Though your body aches from the impact, there is an undeniable sense of purpose here, a strange certainty that you were meant to find this place, and that the fall was not just an accident, but part of something greater. The stone steps seem to stretch endlessly downward. The starbound familiar hovers beside you. It too understands that this is the only path forward. With a final glance upward at the collapsed ground above, now nothing more than a jagged hole through which no light filters, you begin your descent. Each step is careful, the echo of your footsteps reverberating in the confined space. The air grows colder with each step, the chill settling deeper into your bones. The scent of damp earth becomes more pronounced, mingling with a metallic odor, almost like rusted iron, a sharp note that lingers in the back of your throat. Somewhere below, a faint trickle of water echoes, a distant and haunting sound that only deepens the sense of isolation. The starbound familiar moves ahead of you, its glow illuminating the way forward, casting long, shifting shadows along the rough stone walls. The light dances and flickers, creating the illusion of movement in the darkness. As you reach the bottom of the staircase, you descend into a magnificent cavern that stretches endlessly around you. Glowing crystals embedded in the stone walls and the still pools of water scattered across the cavern floor create an illusion of a vast and starlit landscape. You and the starbound familiar move forward cautiously, each footfall muffled by the thick, soft moss that carpets the ground between the stones. The moss, too, glows faintly underfoot, adding to the ethereal light that fills the cavern, creating an otherworldly beauty that feels fragile, as though it might vanish at any moment. The air grows cooler again, a subtle reminder that you are venturing further from warmth. The crystal's lights cast long, elongated shadows that flicker and dance across the jagged and uneven walls, the motion almost hypnotic. A sense of anticipation builds in your chest, a growing awareness that the path ahead holds something unknown, something that will change everything. The familiar sense of unease mingles with excitement, as though you are standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into whatever awaits in the depths below. As you venture deeper into the cavern, the vastness seems to give way to a hidden detail, an almost unnoticed narrow passage at the far end. The entrance is partially obscured by a cluster of tall crystals that shimmer with a cold and pale light. Their sharp edges catch and refract the glow of the cavern, creating a beautiful yet eerie spectacle. The crystals seem to stand like watchmen, guarding the passage, as if to challenge your resolve before you can continue deeper into the unknown. The passage appears different from the rest of the cavern, dark, more foreboding, as though it holds secrets that the open cavern dare not reveal. This passage is unlike the open expanse you left behind. It is narrow, confined, and seems to plunge downward at a steep angle, drawing you into the very bowels of the earth. The darkness within is absolute, almost tangible, and you feel a shiver run down your spine as you stand at its threshold. The opening is just large enough for you to fit through, and you hesitate, the weight of uncertainty heavy in your chest. The air that seeps from the passageway is distinctly colder, biting against your skin and carrying with it the scent of damp earth mixed with a sharp trace, like rust or perhaps blood. There is something primal about the scent, something that speaks of old places left undisturbed. The starbound familiar pauses, hovering near the entrance, its glow intensifying to pierce the shadows that lurk beyond the crystals. It looks back at you, its bright eyes filled with unspoken encouragement. The light it casts dances around the uneven walls, making the narrow passage seem less menacing. You take a deep breath, feeling the chill in your lungs, and step forward with purpose. You push past the tall crystals, their sharp edges brushing against your shoulders, a final reminder of the world you are leaving behind before plunging into the unknown depths. The ground beneath your feet shifts slightly and you begin your descent, the loose stones and gravel making each step precarious. You can feel the instability of the path. Small rocks slide away with a clatter and you catch yourself, one hand shooting out to steady against the rough wall. The stone is cold, almost biting, its jagged texture pressing into your palm. Each step forward takes you deeper, the incline steepening, demanding caution. The narrow walls seem to press in from both sides, and the further you descend, the more the ceiling lowers, forcing you into an uncomfortable stoop. The air is colder still, and the light coming from the familiar flickers over the rough surface, revealing nothing but the unending path downward. The passage continues to narrow, the walls closing in more with every step until you are forced into an awkward crouch, your back hunched and your breath shallow in the confined space. The ceiling seems to lower with each pace until it almost brushes against the top of your head, its cold surface a constant and oppressive presence. The walls are tight, their cold edges grazing your arms, and the uneven ground beneath you adds to the challenge, each step more calculated and careful than the last. It feels as though the earth itself is swallowing you, drawing you deeper into its dark, hidden recesses. The air grows even more stifling, the scent of damp earth and decay surrounds you as the shadows press in closer. The glow of the starbound familiar is your only comfort, the steady light barely pushing back against the thick and encroaching darkness. The familiar moves ahead with ease, its glow illuminating the narrow passage, casting a soft, shifting light that reveals the walls around you. The carvings are still present here, though they have become less intricate, the design simpler and more geometric, as though the further you descend, the less ornate history becomes. The air becomes incredibly damp, the scent of earth growing more intense with every step, mingling with the faint and unpleasant smell that settles heavily in the back of your throat. The dampness makes breathing slightly laborious, each breath filled with the rich scent of deep, undisturbed earth. Somewhere ahead, the sound of dripping water echoes faintly, a distant, rhythmic drop that contrasts sharply against the otherwise muffled silence. Each drop seems to reverberate off the stones, magnified by the emptiness around you, until it feels as if time itself hangs between each interval. You focus on the glow of the familiar, trusting it to guide you. After what feels like an eternity of careful, tense descent, the passage finally begins to widen, the oppressive closeness giving way to open space. The narrow, confining tunnel opens into a larger chamber, and you slowly straighten, your back aching with the relief, finally being able to stand upright. You take a deep breath, but the air is colder here, almost biting, and the dampness clings to your skin, chilling you all the way to your bones. The starbound familiar's light barely reaches the far walls, casting long shadows that seem to dance in the corners of the chamber, leaving much of the room shrouded in mystery. The ceiling stretches high above, lost in darkness, and you can feel the vast emptiness pressing down from above, a stark contrast to the tight passage you left behind. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, a mix of damp earth and patches of thick moss that squelch slightly as you tread upon them. Each step is cautious, your footfalls echoing softly, only to be swallowed by the dense darkness that fills the chamber. The air feels heavy, and the silence is broken only by the occasional drip of water or the faint shuffling of your movements. The starbound familiar glides ahead of you, its soft glow bringing the unfamiliar terrain into focus. Strange, jagged formations rise from the ground, stalagmites covered in a thin layer of luminescent fungi that emit a faint, ghostly glow, their light giving the chamber an eerie and dreamlike quality. You move carefully, weaving between the formations, your senses heightened, every minor sound amplified by the vast emptiness around you. The silence seems to press in, the darkness itself watching, waiting for you to make the wrong move. As you move further into the chamber, you notice stone pillars covered in carvings, intricate scenes depicting figures engaged in activities you can barely comprehend. Some show beings reaching toward the sky, their bodies elongated and twisted, as if trying to escape the confines of the stone itself. Others depict scenes of gatherings, the figures bent over objects that resemble crystals, their postures reverent. The artistry is exquisite, the details so fine that you can almost imagine the figures moving, coming to life under the flickering light of the starbound familiar. The sense of being watched grows stronger as you proceed, and the air seems to grow colder still. The chill is now gnawing at your skin. You pause before one of the pillars, running your fingers lightly over the carvings. The stone is cool to the touch, and the etched lines are sharp beneath your fingertips. There is something otherworldly about the figures, a sense that they are trying to communicate something important, a message left behind for any being, godly or otherwise, that dares venture this far. You pull your hand away and continue down the path, the archway at the far end of the chamber drawing closer. It looms larger with every step, the shadowy entrance seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The closer you get, the more the air around you seems to change, becoming tense and charged, as if the chamber itself is resisting your approach. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself as you step to the threshold. The star-bound familiar pauses, hovering at the entrance, its glow dimming slightly, as if in hesitation. The energy of the unknown pulses against you, an almost palpable barrier, the realization sinking in that whatever lies beyond this archway is unlike anything you've ever encountered. You look at the familiar, its bright eyes meeting yours, filled with an unspoken promise of companionship. In that gaze, you find the strength to take the next step, knowing that you are not alone in facing the challenges ahead. With that final breath, you step through the archway, the darkness swallowing you whole. Where you emerge, the scent of damp earth is overwhelming, almost suffocating. The starbound familiar follows closely, its glow casting eerie shadows along the narrow passage. The walls here are different, they're smoother and less natural, shaped by something other than time and erosion. You continue down the passage, the sense of urgency growing. The path slopes downward, the incline steepening, and you find yourself having to brace against the walls to keep your balance. The stone beneath your feet is slick with moisture, and the dripping sounds from earlier grow louder, echoing through the confined space. Finally, the passage opens up into another chamber, this one smaller and more intimate, the ceiling low enough that you can see it clearly in the dim light. In the center of the room, a pool of water lies still and dark, its surface reflecting the glow of the starbound familiar. The water seems impossibly deep, the darkness within it swallowing the light, and you feel a strange compulsion to approach it. The familiar hovers at the edge of the pool, its gaze fixed on the dark water, and you kneel beside it, staring into the depths. The surface ripples slightly, distorting your reflection, and for a moment, you see something else. A flicker of movement, a shadow that passes beneath the surface, too quick to discern. A sudden chill runs down your spine, and you pull back, the sense of unease growing stronger. The pool seems to call to you, its dark waters whispering secrets that you cannot understand, promises of forgotten knowledge, fragments of power that lie buried beneath its depths. The feeling is almost hypnotic, drawing you in closer, urging you to uncover its mysteries. This is no ordinary pool. This is an ancient force, older than time, a presence so vast and profound that it defies comprehension. It feels alive, aware. Its power radiates from the dark waters, filling the chamber with an undeniable weight. You realize now that it demands something of you, something deep and primal. You reach out with your hand, your touch trembling with uncertainty, and as your fingers hover above the surface of the pool, the water begins to glow faintly, the light spreading outward from its center, illuminating the depths. The glow seems to pulse rhythmically, almost as if in time with a heartbeat, and the shadows within the water shift and dance as if responding to the presence. Slowly, the shadow you saw before reappears, rising gradually to the surface, until you can see it clearly. A figure, humanoid but not quite, its form constantly shifting and changing as though struggling to hold itself together, as if it is being unmade and remade in the same breath. The water ripples around it, shimmering with an ethereal light, and for a moment the figure's face almost takes shape, a suggestion of eyes, a mouth, features that flicker and vanish, refusing to fully exist. It is a being of pure potential, its essence fluid and uncertain, and as you watch, it seems to reach out toward you, its hand forming from the glow, trembling and fragile like a newborn flame. The figure reaches out, its hand breaking the surface of the water, and you feel a pull, an intense, almost gravitational force that tugs at your very core, an irresistible urge that defies reason. The starbound familiar lets out a soft sound, a warning filled with apprehension, its glow flickering as if caught between fear and loyalty. But the pull is too strong. It consumes your thoughts, drowning out any sense of caution. And you reach forward, your fingers brushing against the figure's hand. The touch is electric, a jolt that sends a shockwave through your body, and in that instant, everything changes. The world around you shifts violently. The chamber dissolves in a blinding light, walls and ceiling disintegrating into pure energy. The pool, the starbound familiar, all of it fades away, replaced by a vast and radiant void. You feel weightless, suspended as if time itself has lost its grip on you. The figure's hand closes around yours, its grip warm, almost comforting, yet powerful beyond comprehension. It is as if you are holding onto a fragment of existence itself, something elemental and eternal. A voice echoes in your mind, a whisper that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It is a symphony of sounds, overlapping and ethereal like a chorus of forgotten echoes reverberating through the void. The words are in a language you do not understand. Their cadence is flowing like water, each syllable carrying an ancient resonance that vibrates within your soul. Despite the unfamiliarity, the meaning is unmistakable. A message of hope, of creation, of something sacred that was lost and must be found again. It speaks of an essence, fractured, a potential that needs to be reclaimed, a promise not yet fulfilled. The voice stirs something deep within you, an urge to seek out what has been left behind, to restore what has been broken. The light fades, and you find yourself standing at the edge of the pool once more, the starbound familiar beside you, its eyes wide with concern. The figure is gone, the water still and dark as if nothing had ever happened, yet the feeling of its presence remains. It lingers in the air, a spectral memory woven into the fabric of the chamber. And suddenly, a violent convulsion ripples through the pool, the water surging outward as though rejecting something that does not belong. You step back, your heart pounding as the surface of the pool heaves, frothing with an unnatural intensity. And then with a forceful lurch, a figure is ejected from the pool, a half-formed being sprawling atop the dark waters, suspended as though held by some cruel whim of the divine. It is the creature you touched. Its form is incomplete, a tragedy made manifest. Translucent skin stretches across parts of its body, veins visibly pulsing beneath the surface while other parts are raw, exposed. A grotesque patchwork of creation that was never meant to be seen in this state. Its limbs are only half-formed, twisting unnaturally, their shapes shifting as though unsure of whether to remain solid or to dissolve back into the pool. Its face, if it can be called that, is a shifting mask of anguish, eyes that blink in and out of existence, a mouth that opens but cannot scream, caught between worlds of becoming and undoing. The realization hits you like a blow. This place, this sacred, ethereal space, is not what it once was. There is something deeply wrong, a dissonance in the energy that flows around you, a sense of incompletion that gnaws at your senses. It is as if the very essence of the realm has been altered, its purpose shattered, something precious ripped away before it could fully form. The creature's chest rises and falls in shallow, labored breaths, the effort of existence itself seemingly too much for it to bear. Ichor seeps from its wounds, pooling on the surface of the water, staining the shimmering reflection with a sickly, iridescent sheen. The sight is both heartbreaking and horrifying. A being that should have been magnificent, reduced to this pitiable state. You can see its ribs pressing against its fragile skin, each breath causing its form to shudder. The act of survival a painful struggle. A low, wet sound escapes the creature, an attempt at a voice, a cry that never fully forms, dissolving into a guttural rasp that echoes through the chamber. The starbound familiar hovers close, its light flickering, mirroring the uncertainty and fear that grips you. The creature's limbs twitch, its fingers clawing at the air, as though reaching out for something that might give it purpose, that might end its suffering. Tears prick at the corner of your eyes as you watch, helpless, the weight of your actions crashing down around you. You know this was meant to be a god, a being of divinity and light, of power and grace, and now it is this, a half-formed, broken remnant of what could have been, a reflection of your interference, of the disruption you caused. The pool, once a cradle of creation, now seems to be a tomb, its water holding the tragic remains of something that never had the chance to truly exist. You take a hesitant step forward, your instincts torn between wanting to help and fearing you will only make things worse. The creature turns its head toward you, its flickering eyes meeting yours for the briefest moment. A gaze filled with pain, confusion, and something else. An understanding, perhaps, or a plea. It is as if it knows what has happened, as if it understands that its suffering is not of its own making, but a consequence of forces beyond its control. The starbound familiar lets out a soft and mournful sound, its glow dimming as it moves. And suddenly a violent surge of energy pulses through the creature, and its fragmented form convulses with an intensity that sends chills down your spine. The malformed god lets out a roar that shakes the chamber, a sound so filled with rage and despair that it seems to reverberate in your bones. The twisted, incomplete limbs of the creature flail widely, and raw, chaotic energy begins to emanate from it, a storm of fury that threatens to consume everything in its path. You feel a surge of panic rise within you. The creature's eyes lock onto you, their wild, flickering light filled with pure hatred. The realization hits you like a tidal wave. This abomination, this twisted god, blames you for its misery, its pain. The accusation in its gaze is undeniable, and you know you must escape. Without another thought, you turn and run. The pool behind you erupts in chaos, dark ichor splattering across the stone floor as the malformed god thrashes in agony. The starbound familiar flits behind you, its glow flickering in distress, urging you forward. Your heart pounds in your ears, your breath comes in short and desperate gasps as you sprint towards the archway, the only possible exit from this nightmare. The roar of the creature grows louder behind you, a mixture of rage and anguish, its voice echoing off the chamber walls in a cacophony of suffering. The ground trembles beneath your feet, each step unsteady as the stones seem to shift and quake with the force of the god's fury. The rancid stench of decay fills your nostrils, nearly overwhelming, as if the very air has been corrupted by the creature's twisted existence. The archway is just ahead, the darkness beyond it offering a promise of escape, of safety. You push yourself harder, your legs aching as you leap over the jagged stones scattered across the chamber floor. The light from the starbound familiar casts frantic shadows that dance along the walls, blurring your vision and making it difficult to see, but you don't stop. You can't stop. A sudden crash reverberates through the chamber, and as you glance back, you see one of the malformed god's limbs slam into the ground, sending a spray of ichor and shattered stone in all directions. The creature is trying to drag itself after you. Its movements are frantic and disjointed as if driven by nothing but the raw instinct to destroy. You stumble, catching yourself against the rough stone wall, and then you're through the archway. The darkness swallows you, the cold air of the passage a stark contrast to the chaotic heat of that chamber. You keep running, the sound of the creature's anguished howls echoing behind you, fading as you put distance between yourself and the pool. The starbound familiar hovers close, its glow steadying, its presence a small comfort as the adrenaline slowly begins to ebb. Your steps slow, your breaths coming in ragged gasps as you finally allow yourself a moment to stop. The passage is narrow, the walls pressing in on either side, but it feels safer, less exposed. The sound of the malformed god's fury has grown distant, muffled by the stone walls, and you take a shaky breath, your hands trembling as you brace yourself against the wall. With the immediate danger behind you, you begin to move forward, seeking an escape from the depths of this broken and corrupted realm. The starbound familiar guides you, its light casting a gentle glow, illuminating the rough and uneven path ahead. Each step you take is heavy, the weight of what you have seen pressing down on you, but you push forward, determined to find a way back to the surface. The ascent is slow, the air growing colder, and the passage seems to narrow and widen at random intervals. As you move higher, you begin to notice changes, subtle at first but undeniable. The stone walls, once smooth and strong, are now cracked, fissures running through them like veins, and the floor beneath your feet feels unstable, crumbling slightly with every step. It is as though the very foundations of this place is unraveling, mirroring the tragic state of that aborted god left behind in the chamber pools. A shiver runs down your spine as you pass the pillar that is shattered, its pieces scattered across the floor, glowing faintly with an unnatural and sickly light. The once ethereal beauty of this realm has turned into something grotesque, divine creation reduced to decay and ruin. The air is thick with the metallic scent of rot, and you realize with a sinking feeling that the corruption of the malformed god is spreading, infecting everything it touches. The further you climb, the more evident the breakdown becomes. Walls that once bore intricate carvings of celestial beings are now marred with the dark stains. Their surface is warped and twisted as though the stone itself is in pain. You pause for a moment, running your fingers over a carving of a figure that has almost been completely erased, its form reduced to jagged lines and crumbling edges. It is a stark reminder of the fragility of creation and how easily the beauty can be destroyed. A loud crack echoes through the passage, and you look up just in time to see a section of the ceiling give way, chunks of stone tumbling down, narrowly missing you. You stagger backward, heart pounding as dust fills the air, making it difficult to breathe. The starbound familiar flits around you, its light brightening in alarm, urging you onward. You cough, covering your mouth with your hand, and continue, each step feeling more perilous than the last. The ascent grows steeper, and you find yourself having to climb over piles of debris, collapsed columns, broken stones, shards of what were once magnificent murals depicting the birth of lesser gods. The scenes, now shattered, lie in pieces, their story lost forever. The sense of loss is palpable, an ache that gnaws at your insides, as if the very heart of the place is dying. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, you see it. A faint light in the distance, a glow that speaks of something beyond this nightmare. The sight fills you with a renewed sense of hope, and you quicken your pace, scrambling over the last of the debris, the starbound familiar leading the way. The passage opens up, the walls widening, and the air grows fresher, the oppressive stench of decay slowly dissipating. You emerge into an open space, the surface world at last coming into view. The sky above is not serene, not the vibrant expanse you remember. It is fractured, streaked with angry lines of red and gray, as if the heavens themselves have been wounded. The clouds churn violently, a storm without rain, roiling in an unnatural energy that seems to mirror the chaos below. Lightning flickers within the dark masses, illuminating the jagged horizon in sporadic bursts, each one like a heartbeat of the dying world. The ground beneath your feet is cracked, the once glowing surface now dull and brittle, as though life has been drained from it. The earth shifts uneasily, fissures widening and splintering further as the very bones of this place are breaking apart. Pools of stagnant water, dark and iridescent, dot the landscape. Their surface is marred with the swirling patterns of decay. What little vegetation remains is twisted and gnarled, skeletal branches reaching upward as if in a silent plea for salvation that will never come. You step cautiously, each movement sending small flakes of brittle earth crumbling away. The air is heavy, thick with the acrid stench of decay, and there is a silence that feels profoundly wrong, as though all the life that once thrived here has been swallowed up by an unseen force. The trees that were once radiant and full of light now stand like specters, their bark blackened and cracked, their branches adorned with brittle leaves that disintegrate at your touch, crumbling into ash and drifting away on the cold wind. A dry, biting wind sweeps across the desolate landscape, carrying with it the faint, mournful echoes of a world in ruin. The wind stings your skin, bringing with it not the sweet fragrance of flowers, but the acrid odor of something dying, something that was once beautiful but has now been reduced to dust. The ground beneath you seems to sigh with each step, as if mourning its own demise, and the once golden glow that marked the sacred realm is nowhere to be found, replaced instead by the dim, listless shimmer of a place on the verge of collapse. In the distance, the remnants of what must have once been a magnificent structure now lie in ruin, their stone facades cracked and crumbling, half buried beneath layers of fallen debris. Arches that once reached proudly toward the sky now stand fractured, their elegant curves marred by jagged breaks. You can almost feel the echoes of what once was, a world filled with potential, with divine power and light. But now, it is only a shell, a reminder of what has been lost, a testament to the consequences of meddling in the sacred. The starbound familiar hovers close, its glow dim but unwavering, your small beacon. You take a deep breath, your chest tightening as you look out over the broken landscape. The weight of the aborted god's tragedy bears down on you, a reflection of the ruin that spreads out before you. This place, once vibrant and alive, now mirrors the shattered remnants of divinity, a reflection of the choices made, the irreversible consequences of your actions. There is no going back, no undoing what has been done. The path forward is uncertain, but it's the only path left. Each step you take is a promise to find a way to mend what has been broken, to seek redemption in the face of this overwhelming despair. The wind howls as you move, carrying with it the sound of something distant, something almost like a whisper, as if the land itself is trying to speak to you. You cannot discern the words, but the feeling is unmistakable. It's a plea, a call for help, an echo of a world that still hopes somewhere deep within its fractured heart to be saved. And then something new. You hear it before you see it. A low, guttural static that fills the air, reverberating through the stones beneath your feet. The sound sends a chill through your spine, a dissonant noise that seems to crawl into your mind and linger there. The air grows thick with the weight of something deeply wrong, a sensation that fills you with an instinctual dread. Turning back, your eyes widen as the malformed god begins to emerge from the murky pool, dragging itself painfully onto the shattered ground. The sight is both horrifying and tragic. The creature's limbs shift and change, alternating between solidifying and dissolving, their form a grotesque, ever-shifting mass of divine potential left to fester and fail. The translucent skin stretches taut over writhing veins and muscles, pulsating erratically as though the very act of existing is an insurmountable agony. The being's torso bulges and swells, the faint outlines of malformed organs visible beneath the fragile membranes of its flesh, straining as if they too wish to escape from this incomplete form. The creature's head, if it could be called that, is a nightmare of constantly shifting features, eyes that blink in and out of existence, a gaping mouth that opens and closes, unable to find its voice. It is a patchwork of divine intention gone horribly wrong, a being whose every breath is a testament to suffering. Its arms reach forward, clawing at the ground, leaving behind streaks of iridescent ichor that hiss and steam as they touch the cracked stone. The pools, once a cradle of divine creation, now look like a desecrated altar, tainted with the presence of this agonized remnant. And suddenly, Your vision blurs. You are struck by flashes of something else, visions of what this god could have been. You see, for a fleeting moment, a radiant figure, towering and majestic, bathed in ethereal light that spills across the landscape like the first rays of dawn. It is a being of power and grace, its presence commanding awe, a creation that embodies divinity, but just as quickly as the image forms, it fractures, shattering like fragile glass, and you are left with the horrifying reality before you. The malformed god drags itself forward, its half-formed limbs spasming as it moves. The static in the air intensifies, growing louder, more insistent. The guttural noises become almost like a voice, a broken, dissonant attempt to speak, to convey the agony of its incomplete existence. It is not a sound you hear with your ears, but one that resonates deep within you, a vibration that seems to pull at your bones, that makes your heart pound in your chest. There's a rawness to it, a pain so palpable that it almost brings you to your knees. Your head throbs as more visions assault you, brief, flickering images of the god fully formed, standing tall, its wings spread wide, its gaze filled with purpose. It is beautiful, terrible, awe-inspiring. Everything that this broken, crawling creature should have been. The vision twists, shatters again, and you are left staring at the pitiful, half-formed being before you, its eyes flickering with something that almost looks like recognition. It looks at you, and in its gaze you see pain, confusion, and an accusation, a question as if it knows that you were the one who disrupted its creation. The god's body convulses, its limbs seizing up before dissolving into an amorphous mass, only to reform in a grotesque parody of what was once an attempt to be. The static noise rises to a fever pitch, a discordant wail that fills the air, making your teeth ache. You feel a deep sense of remorse, a weight settling in your chest as you watch the creature struggle. It is a being that was meant to inspire wonder, to embody creation, now reduced to a pitiful state of endless agony. The starbound familiar hovers close, its light flickering as if sensing your turmoil. It lets out a soft and mournful sound, a gentle echo against the guttural wails of the god. Take a step back, your heart pounding, a wave of dread washing over you as the malformed god drags itself another inch forward, its shifting eyes locking onto yours once more. In that moment, you understand the depth of its torment, and the realization hits you like a blow. This creature is not just in pain, it is furious. It knows that it should have been more, that it was denied its true form, and that knowledge has driven it to a rage that fills every fiber of its being. The guttural sounds shift, becoming more insistent, almost a growl, and the god's form starts to swell, its translucent flesh splitting, dark ichor spilling out onto the stone. It is a horrifying sight, a divine being in the throes of its own undoing, lashing out at a world that refused to let it be. You turn, your instincts screaming at you to flee. The starbound familiar darts ahead, its globe brightening as it leads the way, and you follow, your footsteps pounding across the cracked and broken earth. The malformed god's agonized cries echo behind you, a haunting reminder of the consequences of your actions, of the divinity you interrupted, the suffering that now unfolds because of you. You run, the weight of that knowledge pressing down on you, driving you forward across the desolate decay of the landscape, the fractured sky above offering no solace, only a grim reflection of what has been lost. The landscape is a nightmare of twisted forms and shattered potential. What was once a divine realm is now in ruin, the corrupted echoes of what could have been turning the horizon into a place of dread. The ground beneath your feet cracks with every step, brittle and lifeless, while the air is thick with the acrid stench, the scent of something pure that has been spoiled beyond recognition. The vibrant colors that once adorned this sacred place have faded to a muted palette of decay, leaving only shades of gray, brown, and sickly greens. Above, the sky still swirls in a mass of darkened clouds, streaked with veins of crimson that pulse faintly like an open wound. Twisting figures roam the horizon, their forms grotesque parodies of what they once might have been. These creatures, they appear to be beings of potential, but are now filled with rage, reduced to shambling but hostile husks. Their limbs are twisted, their bodies hunched, their faces contorted in an expression of fury and pain. They move with a kind of predatory awareness, their hollow eyes tracking your every movement, their gnarled fingers twitching as if yearning to reach out. They are not alive in any true sense. They are only fragments of a shattered creation, remnants that cling to existence without purpose or hope, lashing out at anything that comes too close. One creature stumbles close to you, its body flickering, parts of it dissolving into mist only to reconstruct moments later. Its gaze is filled with a deep and seething rage. Its eyes are dark pits that seem to absorb all light without reflection, and for a brief and terrible moment, it turns towards you, and its face twists into a snarl, a guttural growl escaping its throat as it lunges in your direction. You step away quickly, your heart pounding, fear and adrenaline surging through you as the creature's misshapen fingers swipe the air where you had just stood. The creature recovers quickly, its rage seemingly intensifying as it turns to face you. This time you have no choice. You brace yourself, drawing the celestial gear blade. You swing just as the unformed abomination lunges again, and you swing with all your strength, striking it in the side. The impact sends a shockwave up your arm, but the creature barely flinches, its form flickering as if your strike did little more than disrupt its cohesion. Another growl escapes the creature, louder this time, and it swipes at you again, its gnarled fingers grazing your arm, leaving a burning sensation in their wake. You grit your teeth, adrenaline pushing you to keep moving, to dodge and strike whenever you can see an opening. The creature is relentless, its attacks coming in quick succession, each one filled with the raw fury of something that knows only pain and anger. As you struggle, more of the twisted creatures begin to appear, drawn by the commotion. Their guttural growls fill the air, and you realize with sinking dread that you are becoming surrounded. One by one, they shamble toward you, their rage-filled eyes fixed on your every move. The first creature lunges again, and you barely manage to deflect it, but another one steps forward, its twisted limbs reaching for you. Panic sets in as you realize the sheer number of them. There's no way to fight them all. You swing your sword wildly, trying to keep them at bay, but they are closing in, their forms shifting and flickering, their movements erratic but determined. The starbound familiar flares brightly, its light momentarily forcing the creature to hesitate, but it is only a brief reprieve. They close in from all sides, their growls becoming a deafening chorus of fury. Cold, unyielding hands grasp at you, pulling you down, and despite your desperate thrashing, there are simply too many of them. Suddenly, an immense pressure clamps down on your left leg, and in an instant, the world seems to pop, plunging you into a strange pocket of frozen time. The creatures around you are suspended mid-lunge, their snarls and twisted fingers locked in place, an eerie stillness replacing the chaos. You quickly realize, however, that while you are able to move, your left foot remains trapped, frozen in time along with the rest of the world. The pressure on your leg is both a lifeline and a shackle, holding you fast even in the madness all around you, leaving you caught between escape and entrapment. You don't fully recognize the sensation, but you assume that this is the crown of fractured infinity. Its presence seems unmistakable as it anchors you in this moment. There is no dodging, no running. The weight of its power binds you to this reality, forcing you to face what lies in front of you. Your only option is to endure, to withstand the tide of chaos and survive. Panic bubbles within you and your mind races, desperately trying to think of a way to survive this onslaught. The pressure on your left leg keeps you from escaping entirely, and the snarling figures are suspended only for the moment. You know time will inevitably return, and the chaos will once again rush to meet you. You glance around, considering every possible escape route. Could you fight them off again? The sheer number of them makes the idea seem foolish, almost laughable. Could you try to break free of the force that's holding your foot in place? The thought crosses your mind, but a sharp pain from your anchored leg reminds you that the pressure is no ordinary obstacle. It is as if time itself holds you fast, beyond the reach of mere strength. The options are dwindling, and a stark realization sinks in. If you do not act soon, you will be overwhelmed, torn apart by the rage-filled beings that encircle you like vultures. You need a solution that will give you a chance to endure, to outlast this dreadful tide until you can find a better way forward. The crowns. They are your only hope. The thought of using the symbiotic crown makes you pause. It is a crown of immense power, but its price is always pain, a deep, searing agony that racks the body and pushes you to the brink of your endurance. You take a shaky breath, the fear of that pain almost holding you back. But the sight of the frozen creatures, their twisted limbs, their eyes filled with murderous rage, forces your hand. Pain is preferable to death. Slowly, you reach up to the symbiotic crown, feeling it pulse, alive, aware, and eager. The crown seems to sense your intent, and a faint, almost mocking whisper echoes in the back of your mind, a reminder of the cost you are about to pay. You close your eyes, bracing yourself, and allow the power of the crown to surge through you. The transformation is immediate. Vines burst out from the ground around you, thick and sinewy, twisting upward with a life of their own. They wind around your body, encasing you in a protective cocoon. The pain is excruciating. Each vine that touches your skin feels like fire, burning its way into your flesh, binding you in the union that is as much torment as it is salvation. You grit your teeth, a guttural cry escaping your lips as the vines continue their work, wrapping tighter, growing thicker, until they are completely enclosed around you, hidden from the outside world. The cocoon they have created is like a cage, but also your shield. The vines pulse with the energy of the symbiotic crown, their presence both a comfort and a torment. The pain does not subside, it is constant, gnawing at your senses, threatening to pull you under. But you hold on, focusing on your breathing, on the feeling of the vines encasing you, creating a barrier between you and the twisted beings soon to awaken from their frozen state. It does not feel like enough. The cocoon alone will not be enough to protect you. The creatures are relentless and their fury is unending. You need something more, something to ensure that this protective shell will hold against their attacks. And the Twilight Crown. You reach for its power, your mind barely able to focus through the pain of the symbiotic crown. The Twilight Crown responds with a cool and calming energy, a stark contrast to the searing agony that envelops you. You feel its power flow through you, a soothing wave that washes over the vines, imbuing them with new strength. The cocoon begins to change, its surface shimmering as iridescent midnight scales form, covering the vines in a protective layer that glows with an ethereal beauty. The scales are dark, almost black, but they catch the faintest light, reflecting hues of deep purple, blue, and silver. A mesmerizing sight, like the night sky come to life. The pain from the symbiotic crown is still there, still sharp and biting, but the pressure of the Twilight Crown tempers it, dulling the edge, allowing you a moment of clarity. You can feel the cocoon solidifying around you, the vines and scales merging into a single entity, a barrier that feels impenetrable. It is as though the very essence of the twilight itself has wrapped around you, shielding you from the horrors outside. You take a deep breath, the air inside the cocoon thin but sufficient. The world outside remains frozen, but you know it's only a matter of time before the pocket of stillness collapses and the creatures resume their assault. For now, though, you are safe, enclosed within the cocoon of vines and scales, a sanctuary born of pain and power. It is not a perfect solution, but it is enough. It has to be enough. You close your eyes, focusing on the sensations, the pain, the weight of the crowns, the warmth of the twilight crown's protective embrace. You remind yourself to endure, to hold on, and to survive. The world outside may be filled with fury and darkness, but within this cocoon, there is a moment of peace, a fragile and precious moment that you will cling to until the storm passes. Inside the cocoon, time feels distorted, a blend of moments that stretch and blur together as you try to focus on the sensations that anchor you. The pressure of the vines against your body, the iridescent glow of the scales wrapping you in twilight's embrace, the searing pain that pulsates with every breath. It all merges into an overwhelming sensation, drowning out everything else. Time resumes, and suddenly your meditation is fractured by surprised screams and impacts against the cocoon that feel like hundreds of meteors raining down upon you. Then something else changes, a sound reaching your ears, muffled through the layers of vines and scales, yet unmistakable. The sound of motion, swift and purposeful. Your eyes snap open, though there is nothing to be seen within the confined space. You strain your senses, trying to make sense of what happened beyond your cocoon. The first sound is a dull thud, followed by another, and then another. Something or someone is moving out there. The thuds grow louder, the noise coming closer, each one reverberating through your protective cocoon. A moment later, you hear a slash, a wet, sickening sound followed by the heavy impact of a body hitting the ground. Your heart races, your breath quickening despite the tight space. Another noise, the unmistakable crack of something being broken, and then the rush of movement, bodies colliding, struggling. You hear the snarls of the twisted beings, the guttural sounds of their rage rising above the chaos, followed quickly by a metallic clang, a blade perhaps striking true. The cacophony continues, the violence unfurling just beyond your fragile sanctuary. You hear the sound of bodies crashing against the cocoon, the impact rattling your makeshift shield, causing the vines to shift and groan under the pressure. Fear clenches your gut. You have no idea who or what is out there, no idea if this new force is friend or foe. You listen as the chaos intensifies, the sounds of struggle growing louder, more frantic. Each impact, each slash seems to resonate with a brutal finality, a reminder of the danger that still surrounds you. You hold your breath, trying to remain as still as possible, your heart pounding in your ears, drowning out any other sounds. The snarls of the unbound beings grow more desperate and more pained. You hear the sharp, ragged gasps of something wounded, the sounds of limbs hitting the ground, heavy and lifeless. The struggle continues, but the unbound are losing, that much is clear. One by one, their voices are silenced, replaced by a sound of something or someone moving methodically, ensuring the last remnants of life are extinguished. The minutes stretch on, each one an eternity. You remain perfectly still, cocooned in your protective shell, your mind racing. Whoever or whatever is out there is powerful enough to take on the unbound beings, to cut through them with ruthless efficiency. But what does that mean for you? Are you next? Or is this unseen force somehow here to help? Another heavy thud lands against the cocoon, and you wince, feeling the vibration rattle through your entire body. The vines around you tighten instinctively, responding to the pressure, reinforcing the barrier between you and whatever madness is taking place beyond. You close your eyes, trying to focus on the darkness within, on the small semblance of safety your cocoon provides. The chaos outside begins to subside, the sounds of battle growing fewer, the violence tapering off. The snarls of the unbound are silenced, replaced by an eerie quiet, a stillness that feels both a relief and a new kind of dread. You hear the faint rustle of something moving, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching. You hold your breath, your entire body tensed, waiting. You still have no idea what is happening, no idea if you are about to be discovered, exposed. The footsteps stop just outside your cocoon, and the silence stretches on, heavy and suffocating. You can feel your pulse in your ears, a rapid rhythm that matches the tension coiling in your muscles. And you remain there hidden and waiting, unsure of if the next moment will bring salvation or doom. The silence outside the cocoon feels eternal, each moment dragging on, suspended between hope and dread. And then suddenly you feel it. A change, a shift in the vines that encase you. At first it is subtle, a gentle loosening, as if the living threads are relaxing their grip. But then the sensation grows more pronounced. The vines are retracting, pulling back into your arm. The shelter that had kept you safe now slowly dissipating. Panic surges through you. You can feel the vines unwinding from your body, their rough texture sliding across your skin as they retreat. The iridescent scales that had covered the cocoon fade, losing their shimmering luster, and with them goes the comforting sense of protection. The cocoon that had once shielded you from the violence outside is falling apart, leaving you exposed, vulnerable to whatever remains beyond. You try to will the vines to stay, to hold on just a little longer, but they pay no heed to your silent plea. They retract further, the pressure against your body easing until the only thing left is the faint ache where they once had been wrapped tightly. Your heart pounds, your breath coming in short gasps as the last vines vanish, sinking back beneath your skin, their presence reduced to nothing more than the lingering warmth in your arm. The world beyond the cocoon comes into view and you blink, your eyes adjusting to the dim light. The air feels colder, sharper without the insulation of the vines. You take in your surroundings, your gaze darting frantically trying to understand what is happening. Bodies lie scattered across the ground, twisted forms of the unbound beings, their limbs splayed in unnatural angles. Whatever had attacked them had done so with a ruthless efficiency. And amidst the fallen forms, your eyes pick up on a figure, a creature of swirling black energy covered in iridescent midnight scales. And you feel a jolt of recognition, and it dawns on you. It's the starbound familiar. It has evolved, transformed by the power of the twilight crown. The familiar now stands tall, its once soft light replaced by a shifting, almost celestial darkness. The scales reflecting hues of violet and deep blue. It exudes a presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying, the essence of twilight made manifest. The familiar's head turns toward you, its eyes, still those same swirling galaxies of gentle light, meet yours. There's a flickering recognition, something that cuts through the new, imposing exterior. You swallow, a rush of emotion flooding your senses, relief that it is still here, gratitude for whatever protection it offered during the chaos, and the undercurrent of fear for what this transformation means. Slowly, you extend your hand, palm open, a gesture of trust. The starbound familiar watches you, its gaze unblinking. For a moment, nothing happens. Just the two of you standing amidst the twisted forms of the unbound beings, the air heavy with the aftermath of battle. And then with a soft rustle, the familiar moves closer, its dark form flowing with an almost ethereal grace. It lowers its head, pressing its forehead gently against your palm. The contact is smooth, the sensation is strange, like touching a breeze that has taken form, a shiver running through your fingers. The familiar's energy pulses beneath your touch, gentle and warm. A sense of connection blooms between you two deeper than before, as if the familiar's transformation has somehow brought you closer. You can feel its emotions, an echo of pride, of protection and loyalty. It had fought for you, defending you when you were vulnerable, and now it stands ready to continue this journey, changed, but still yours. You glance around, the twisted remains of the unbound being serving as a reminder of the danger that still lurks in this place. The two of you move through the eerie landscape, the air heavy with an otherworldly stillness. It is as though the entire horizon is watching and waiting. The starbound familiar keeps close, its dark, swirling form contrasting sharply with the scattered remnants of the unbound beings. The silence is thick. Each step echoes faintly against the brittle ground. Suddenly, the ground beneath your feet begins to shift, almost imperceptible at first, but then more noticeably. A rippling effect as if the land itself is alive and responding to your presence. You and the starbound familiar exchange a glance, tension rising between you two. The earth moves like a great creature breathing, pulsing beneath your feet, each ripple moving outward, causing the ground to crack and reform as if rejecting its own state of being. A low guttural sound comes from deep beneath the surface, vibrating up through your legs. The ground swells and then splits, revealing something, an enormous serpentine form made of twisted roots and glassy translucent material, uncoiling from beneath the earth. It moves with an unsettling fluidity, writhing slowly as if waking from an ancient slumber. The length seems endless, disappearing into the shattered ground, and as it moves, its surface reflects fractured images of the sky and landscape around you. The starbound familiar snarls, stepping in front of you, its darkened scales bristling. The massive serpent pauses, its glassy surface shimmering, and then it bends toward you. Through the translucent surface, you catch glimpses of strange and shifting shapes, visions of what might be different times or places, overlapping and morphing. It is as though the serpent is a living window, a conduit to the countless realities, all converging in this singular monstrous form. The serpent lets out a sound, a mixture of a groan and a sigh that reverberates through the air, causing the ground to tremble. The vibrations crawl up your legs, making it difficult to keep your balance. You instinctively reach out and place a hand on the starbound familiar's back. The serpent moves again, its body undulating as it weaves in a slow arc around you, and then without warning its head dips low, an empty reflective surface turning directly toward you. In that moment you see yourself, your form fractured and multiplied, reflected back 1,000 times, each version slightly different. Some show you as you are, others depict you scared, altered, or entirely unrecognizable. The sensation is dizzying, a rush of confusion that makes your head spin, and you feel like you were looking at the entirety of your existence, each possibility fighting for dominance in the reflection. Suddenly the images shatter, and the serpent recoils as if in pain. A crack runs along its surface, and a dark liquid seeps from within, dripping onto the ground with an acidic hiss. The air fills with a sharp, metallic scent, and the serpent thrashes, its form flickering between translucent and solid, as if struggling to maintain its existence. The starbound familiar moves closer, nudging you to take a step back, its eyes never leaving the serpent. You watch, breath caught in your throat as the enormous creature writhes, twisting in on itself, the cracks spreading along its length. With a final, echoing groan, the serpent plunges back into the ground, disappearing into the depths below, leaving behind a scarred, smoking fissure. The two of you stand in the eerie and unsettling quiet, the scarred fissure left by the serpentine creature still smoking in the distance. The starbound familiar remains close, its glowing eyes vigilant, scanning the landscape for any further signs of movement. The air is thick with tension, every breath you take feeling like it could shatter the fragile silence that has settled over the bleeding horizon. A sudden, distant noise makes you turn sharply, a rapid, erratic sound echoing across the barren expanse. The ground trembles, the vibrations reaching up through the soles of your boots. Something is closing in on your location and fast. Your heart begins to pound, and instinctive fear spreads through you. The starbound familiar lets out a warning growl, its scales bristling as you both strain to see what happened. From the distance, a grotesque shape appears. It moves with its own disturbing fashion, a writhing, twisting mass of malformed limbs and exposed sinew. It looks like a creature that was never meant to be, an unfinished creation torn from its purpose, a vision of pain and incompleteness given form. You recognize it instantly. The aborted god. Its rage and agony are palpable, radiating off it like waves as if the very air shivers in response. The creature's body constantly shifts, parts of it dissolving into blackened mist before reforming with jagged, almost desperate movements. Its eyes, pale, glowing embers, lock onto you and you feel your breath hitch in your throat. There is an undeniable intensity in its gaze, something beyond mere anger. It is a wounded, tortured being, robbed of its divine purpose, and it blames you for the intrusion that tore it from creation. The ground beneath your feet seems to recoil from the creature's presence, cracks spreading outward with each step it takes. It moves with surprising speed, closing the distance between you in moments, its elongated limbs reaching out with a grotesque, jerking grace. The starbound familiar leaps forward, meeting the creature head-on, its form shifting to brace for impact. The two beings collide, the force of the impact sending out a shockwave that makes you stagger backwards. The familiar grapples with the aborted god, its dark scales shimmering in the muted light. The creature lashes out wildly, its malformed limbs twisting around the familiar, trying to crush and tear. The sound of their struggle fills the air, a cacophony of growls, hissing, and the wet, sickening sound of tearing flesh. You watch, your heart pounding as the starbound familiar is almost overwhelmed by the creature's relentless assault. The malformed god strikes with furious intensity, its limbs a chaotic mass of exposed sinews and dark energy, each blow shaking the familiar to its core. The familiar's form flickers and distorts, its dark scales straining under the onslaught, as if struggling to maintain cohesion. The aborted god's shriek pierces the air, a sound so filled with agony and hatred that it reverberates through your bones, shaking the very essence of the bleeding horizon. The horizon itself seems to ripple, the shattered landscapes responding to the unbridled rage of the creature. The familiar is thrown backward, skidding across the brittle ground, its claws digging in to slow the momentum. The creature lunges again, its malformed body twisting unnaturally as it leaps, its claws outstretched, aiming to tear into the familiar's vulnerable side. The starbound familiar reacts with a burst of speed, dodging just in time, its dark form a blur as it counters with a vicious swipe of its own. The blow lands, dark energy crackling along the aborted god's side, leaving a searing mark that seems to eat away the flesh, dissolving parts of its already unstable form. The god screeches again, its rage only growing, its limbs writhing as it lashes out wildly, its strikes fueled by both pain and a desperate need to inflict harm. The two beings clash repeatedly, each impact sending shockwaves through the ground, cracks spiderwebbing outward from the sheer force of their battle. The familiar uses every ounce of its strength to hold the creature at bay. Its movements are fluid and precise, but the malformed god is relentless, its attacks unpredictable, its rage a force of nature that seems impossible to quell. You can feel the power of their conflict in the air, the energy crackling, the ground trembling beneath your feet. The familiar's eyes blaze with determination, and it lets out a deep and resonant growl as it lunges forward, ramming into the creature's torso, driving it back with sheer force. The malformed god stumbles, its body collapsing inward before reforming again, dark mist swirling around it as it lets out a guttural roar. The familiar pounces, sinking its claws into the creature, its dark scales glinting in the dim light of the bleeding horizon. The aborted god writhes, twisting violently, its limbs lashing out in every direction, catching the familiar across the side with a sickening crunch. The familiar falters but does not let go, its grip tightening, dark energy surging from its claws into the creature, causing it to convulse and shriek in agony. The battle seems endless, a chaotic dance of fury and resilience. The aborted god's form flickers, pieces of it disintegrating, only to reform moments later, its very existence a painful struggle. The starbound familiar, though battered, refuses to relent, its dark eyes locked onto the malformed being, a fierce determination driving it forward. The aborted god lets out another shriek, a sound so filled with despair that it almost makes you falter. The ground grows thick with the scent of scorched flesh and rusted iron, each breath a struggle as you watch the two beings locked in combat. The familiar, with a final surge of strength, forces the creature back, slamming it into the ground with a resounding impact that shakes the very earth. But the malformed god is not defeated. It endures, its body phasing through the ground, vanishing for an instant before erupting violently beneath your feet. The force throws you off balance, the ground shattering around you as the god emerges, its twisted limbs lashing out in a renewed frenzy beneath you. The violent eruption of dark energy propels you into the air. You barely register the sensation before you come crashing back down, your body slamming into the jagged and broken earth. Pain explodes through your side, a deep, searing agony that takes your breath away. You gasp, trying to push yourself up, but your left leg feels like it's on fire, a sharp stabbing pain radiating from your calf. You glance down and see blood, a dark stain seeping into the shattered ground around you. And your leg is barely holding on to the rest of your body. The world tilts, your vision swimming as pain threatens to overwhelm you. You press a hand around the wound, trying to staunch the flow of blood, but the pain is blinding, each heartbeat sending a fresh wave of agony coursing through your leg. The starbound familiar is still engaged with the other parts of the malformed god, their battle continuing unabated. But you can feel the familiar's presence in your mind, a flicker of concern, a desperate urge for you to hold on. You grit your teeth, forcing yourself to focus. You can't afford to be helpless, not here, not now. The crown, the symbiotic crown, it's your only chance. You reach out, your hand trembling as you touch the intricate vine-like structure fused to your wrist. The crown responds immediately, a surge of energy rushing through you, a dark warmth that brings both relief and dread. The vines twist and coil, spreading from your wrist and down your arm, winding around your injured leg. The pain intensifies, the vines burrowing into the wound, fusing with your flesh. You bite down on the scream, the agony unbearable as the crown demands its price. The vines pulse, their dark surface shimmering as they crudely stitch your leg back together, sealing the gashes, stopping the flow of blood. The pain doesn't fade, but it changes. A dull, throbbing ache, the sensation of the living vines moving beneath your skin. You take a shaky breath, your entire body trembling from the effort. The ground beneath you feels unsteady, the landscape around you blurred, but you force yourself to stand. The symbiotic crown supports you, the vines tightening, holding your injured leg steady, though every movement sends a jolt of pain through your body. You reach for the second crown, the twilight crown. Your fingers brushing against the cold, iridescent scales fused to your destroyed leg. With a thought, the crown activates, the scales spreading outward, covering the vines in a layer of shimmering midnight. The scales pulse with a faint, ethereal glow, and you feel a strange sense of calm, a protective presence that wraps around you like a shield. The iridescent scales harden, forming an impenetrable layer over the vulnerable vines, reinforcing the bindings that hold your leg together. You take another step, the pain still there but muted, your injured leg encased in a protective shell of living vines and shimmering scales. The malformed god is still thrashing, the starbound familiar fighting with all of its strength, but now you feel a flicker of hope, a chance to endure, to survive. The adrenaline courses through your veins as you steady yourself, the shimmering armor of the vines and scales still pulsing around your leg, anchoring you to the ground. The starbound familiar is fighting with every ounce of its strength, and you know that you can't leave it alone in this battle, not when it's done so much for you. You reach behind you, feeling the weight of the celestial gear blade, your weapon, hopefully your salvation. The moment your fingers curl around the hilt, an electric pulse travels through your arm. The celestial gear blade hums to life, its intricate mechanisms whirring softly as the gears within it shift and align. The blade unfurls, glinting with celestial light, an ethereal glow that seems to repel the darkness of the bleeding horizon. The weapon feels alive in your hand as though it understands the gravity of this moment and the battle you are about to face. You take a deep breath, feeling the celestial gear blade grow warm in your grip. The blade is longer now, the gears shifting to give you more reach, the edges serrated with a celestial sharpness that cuts through the air with ease. The ground beneath you rumbles as the aborted god rises once more, its malformed limbs writhing as it locks its glowing, ember-like eyes onto you. There's a flicker of recognition in those eyes, an understanding that this is not yet finished. The starbound familiar breaks away from the creature for a moment, its scales cracked and battered, yet its spirit unbroken. It turns toward you, willpower in its eyes, and you nod, lifting the celestial gear blade, feeling its weight, the promise of destruction it holds. Together, you and the familiar rush forward, the ground splintering beneath your feet as you close the distance to the malformed god. The aborted god roars, its limbs flailing wildly, but this time you're ready. You bring the celestial gear blade down in a powerful arc, the blade cleaving through the twisted mist and sinew of the god's form. The celestial light from the blade sears the flesh, and the creature cries out, its roar echoing across the horizon. The starbound familiar lunges at its side, dark energy rippling across its scales as it tears into the god, the two of you moving in tandem, striking with fury. The aborted god lashes out, one of its limbs catching your side and your scent soaring through the air. But the twilight crown's iridescent scales absorb the impact, the force dissipating across the shimmering armor that now encases you entirely. You grit your teeth, standing, and push forward, the pain barely registering as you focus entirely on the battle. The celestial gear blade vibrates in your hands, the gears shifting again as the blade contracts and expands, finding new angles to strike. The god thrashes, its form flickering, pieces of it disintegrating under your assault. It lunges at you, its claw-like appendages raking through the air, but the starbound familiar intercepts, taking the blow with a feral snarl before countering with a burst of dark energy, driving the god back. You seize the opening, stepping in and bringing the celestial gear blade down in a swift and brutal strike that connects with the malformed god's chest. The creature screams, a guttural sound of anguish that shakes the very ground beneath you. The celestial gear blade bites deeper, the gears grinding as the blade shudders, channeling a burst of celestial energy that seems to resonate through the entire landscape. The god's corporeal form begins to unravel, dark mist spilling from its wounds that do not come back when it reforms, its body collapsing in on itself as the energy sears through its corrupted essence. The familiar presses the attack, its eyes blazing as it tears into the god's side, the two of you moving as one. The malformed god tries to phase through the ground to escape, but the celestial gear blade holds it in place, the celestial energy binding it, forcing it to endure. The creature's limbs flail, its body convulsing, and for a moment you see it. The vision of what could have been, the radiant, powerful, and divine figure. But the vision shatters, replaced by the reality of this broken, twisted form. With a final, desperate scream, the aborted god collapses, its body now dissolving into mist, the dark energy dispersing into the air, leaving behind only silence. In the aftermath of the god's dissolution, the ground where it fell seems different, an anomaly among the broken terrain. As you approach, you see a ring of shifting matter, a strange, swirling pool of dark mist and shimmering light. The energy left behind by the fallen god coalesces into something almost tangible, its surface rippling like water disturbed by the unseen forces of life. The starbound familiar steps beside you, its eyes fixed on the ring, head tilted slightly as if trying to understand what it sees. The celestial gear blade hums softly, the gears settling as the battle comes to an end. The light from the blade fading until the weapon is just that once more, heavy in your hands. You take a deep breath, your chest heaving, the exhaustion of the fight finally catching up to you. The starbound familiar limps to your side, its scales battered, but its eyes still bright, a flicker of triumph in their depths. You lower the celestial gear blade, the weight of the battle still heavy on your shoulders. But for now, you have won. The silence of the bleeding horizon is profound, the aftermath of the battle settling like a shroud over the broken landscape. The air is thick with the scent of scorched earth and lingering energy, the ground beneath your feet still trembling. The starbound familiar stands close by, its eyes flickering, ever watchful, its scales glistening faintly under the dim, surreal light that hangs over the horizon. You catch sight of something in the dust, a glimmer of movement that stands out against the stillness of the barren ground. Slowly, you approach, your heart still pounding from the exertion of the fight, your senses heightened as you focus on the shifting shape in front of you. The familiar watches, its eyes narrowing with curiosity. The object lies in the very center where the malformed god fell, nestled amidst the ash and shattered earth. As you draw closer, you see it clearly. A ring, unlike anything you have ever seen. It is composed of shifting matter, its surface constantly in flux, flowing like liquid metal, yet solid enough to hold form. The colors shift and blend, iridescent hues dancing across its surface, reflecting the violet and crimson light of the bleeding horizon. You kneel down, your breath catching as you observe it. The ring of light seems alive, its energy palpable. It radiates a sense of power, something primordial, as if it holds a fragment of the divine essence that once resided within the aborted god. The longer you look at it, the more the colors seem to change, deep blues shifting into golds, silvers rippling into reds, an endless dance of creation and destruction captured in a single loop. Your fingers hover above the ring and you hesitate, a sense of reverence holding you back. This is not just any artifact. This is a piece of something greater, something that was meant to be, but was never allowed to fully become. You can feel the echoes of that pain, that sense of loss radiating from the ring, as if it mourns the death of the god it was connected to. The ring pulses with energy as your fingers close around it. The heat radiates through your palm, filling you with both awe and a strange sense of dread. Before you can fully comprehend, the ring begins to move, slithering beneath your skin, shifting through your veins. It travels, a serpentine current, sliding up your arm, across your shoulders, until it wraps around your neck. And there it settles, the warmth concentrating, the sense of completion washing over you. With the completion of 5 crowns, the bone sovereigns, the symbiotic, the twilight, the fractured infinity, and the unbound, a spark ignites inside you. A fiery energy bursts from your chest, spreading like an inferno, every nerve alight with sensation. Your mind blazes as the crowns interact, each one resonating, calling out to the others. They coalesce inside of you, merging, combining their forces in a surge of raw power that feels as though it could shatter you from within. Visions flash before your eyes, fractured images of the realms you've traversed, of the beings you've encountered. There are glimpses of battles fought, moments of despair, of triumph, and of glory. They are fragments of all you have been, all you have ever faced, and yet there is something more. Amidst the chaos, there is a sense of unity, a purpose that binds all the crowns, all their power into a singular force within you. The pain is almost unbearable, a relentless pressure that builds in your skull, in your chest, in every muscle and bone. It is as though the entire weight of creation bears down on you, the essence of each crown battling for dominance within your very being. You feel yourself splitting apart, every fragment of who you were shattered, each piece grinding against the other as it fights to find a place in this rebirth. The bone sovereign's might presses against you, a raw, skeletal force, while the symbiotic crown latches onto your nerves, spreading like roots into your muscles, your veins, demanding a price for its power. The twilight crown weaves itself into the chaos, ethereal threads binding and pulling at your spirit, trying to mend the fragments as they tear apart. The energy of the fractured infinity pulses like a rhythmic scream, enduring the infinite timelines where you failed and fell. It forces you to endure, to face every mistake, every failure all at once, as if the very fabric of your mind is being shredded and restitched in a single maddening instant. And there's the unbound. It seethes, a mass of chaotic energy fighting against itself, torn between the aborted God, the God that could never fully become, and the magnificent entity it was meant to be. The power lashes out, folding back upon itself, one moment radiating godly strength and the next collapsing into a twisted parody of its own potential. Its turmoil is yours, a battle fought not just within your body but within your soul. You feel the aborted God's anger, its sense of betrayal, its desire to be more, to be whole, and it burns through you, a searing agony that rips through your very core. Your vision blurs as the pressure builds. Flashes of radiant light and absolute darkness explode behind your eyes. The force within you threatens to tear your consciousness apart, every nerve and every muscle vibrating with the impossible energy of 5 distinct entities trying to coexist. You feel your body contort, muscles spasming, your bones aching as though they are being bent, twisted beyond recognition. The familiar stands beside you, its eyes reflecting the shifting light, flickers of concern visible within its gaze. It remains silent, but its presence shows you what's real, a reminder of the worlds beyond this torment, the thread to pull you back from the brink. Your mind is a battlefield of sensations, visions overlapping, images of you adorned in the radiance of divinity, towering and terrible, a figure of light and wrath, coexist with scenes of disillusion where you are nothing but a fractured, formless husk. The energy writhes inside of you, the crowns converging, their forces melding, reshaping the boundaries of what you are. The unbound struggles to reach a crescendo, a violent burst of desperation. Its formlessness crashing against the rigidity of the other crowns, and you feel it. The push and pull, the agony of being caught between what is and what could have been. The pain ebbs and surges in waves, your senses caught in a maelstrom, the crowns twisting within you, each demanding dominance before relenting to the other. The agony of the unbound's battle seems to echo through your being, and yet amidst this madness there is a strange, underlying thread of coherence, a whisper of a purpose larger than any individual crown. The familiar's presence steadies you, the unwavering anchor. Slowly, the chaos begins to resolve itself, not into peace, but into something sustainable, something that allows you to exist. The energy begins to stabilize, each crown finding its place, their powers no longer fighting, but merging, resonating. The inferno within you subsides into smoldering embers, the unbearable heat cooling, leaving behind an aching exhaustion, and yet a strange, newfound awareness. Your body sags, trembling, your breaths come in ragged gasps, but there is a sense of unity now, a completeness where once there was only fractured power. The familiar shifts closer, brushing against you, its scales warm and comforting against your skin. You stand amidst the aftermath of your transformation, feeling the deep connection between yourself and the bleeding horizon, the essence of the aborted God now fused with your own, alongside the power of the crowns. You are no longer human. Your body is new, forged from the crowns themselves, an amalgamation of divine power and raw potential. You are no longer just a bearer of these artifacts, no. You are their convergence. Your skin shimmers with the iridescence of the twilight crown. Veins of tamed obsidian from the bone sovereign's crown lie beneath the surface. Vines from the symbiotic crown weave across your form, pulsating with a dark and primal energy, while traces of fractured light from the fractured infinity form like shards of glass orbiting you. The unbound's chaos is visible too, an ever-shifting haze that wreathes your form, struggling against itself, ever at odds. The earth trembles beneath you, a guttural, grinding shudder as you close your eyes and feel the recycling energy of the aborted God deep below, returned to the rotted chamber that was once the pools of creation. Its faint pulse calls out, raw and unfinished, an existence still yearning to be complete. You can sense it, the restless echo of potential buried in the darkness. You must make things right. You kneel, pressing your palms flat against the cold and cracked ground. The energy of the unbound crown, embedded in your neck, surges through you, chaotic, fierce, a barely contained tempest, searching, seeking. The ground beneath your hands pulses, growing feverish as if the earth itself stirs awake, something ancient responding to the summons. The power flows through you like molten fire, a torrent of raw creation seeping into the depths, gnawing away at the barriers between what was and what could still be. Below, you sense the aborted God, its pain of visceral, almost unbearable persistence, the confusion, the agony. It resonates in waves, and you can feel its struggle, its yearning to rise. You offer it a chance to be more than a whisper of what it could have been. You feel the Bone Sovereign's crown embedded in your right wrist begin to resonate, its power pushing against the limits of your body. The energy is raw and heavy, a deep rumbling force that moves through your bones and into the earth. Slowly, agonizingly, it finds the essence of the aborted God, cradling it, stabilizing it against its own chaos. You grit your teeth, sweat beading on your forehead as the Bone Sovereign's power holds the fractured spirit, preventing it from dissipating. The pressure is immense, your very bones might shatter from the strain. The roots of the symbiotic crown, bound to your left wrist, begin to pulse and twist, turning into flesh and sinew as they plunge into the ground. They writhe, living tendrils growing thicker and more grotesque, the skin peeling back to reveal throbbing arteries as they force their way into the earth. The roots seek out the essence of the aborted God, and then intertwining with it, wrapping around its formless presence and beginning to give it substance. You can feel it through the roots as the essence takes shape. Nerves begin to form, delicate threads suspended in pure, crackling energy, each one trembling with the agony of exposed new life. The god's form is dragged upward, clawing at the earth as it begins to be dragged. Its nascent form finally breaks through the surface, exposed nerves and veins spasming as they are pulled from the earth below. It is a grotesque sight. It is a scene of rebirth, a spectacle of raw creation marred by agony. Raw flesh knits itself, twitching and pulsing, reluctant to take form, while nerves are covered by dripping flesh, trembling with each new spark of sensation. The god writhes in agony, its form jerking violently as its mind forms and struggles to comprehend the sudden, brutal reawakening. Each movement is desperate, almost instinctual, as though it seeks to escape the relentless onslaught of pain coursing through its half-formed body. Its muscles, barely developed, contract and spasm uncontrollably, while its mouth opens in a silent scream, eyes wide and filled with a primal terror that even the gods seem to experience. The air is thick with the stench of blood, of damp earth, and of something far more ancient, an aroma that reeks of primal suffering. It clings to your senses, a nauseating byproduct of the unnatural birth taking place before you. The ground around the god is now slick with fluids, the dark earth mixing with the blood and the strange, shimmering ichor that leaks from its veins, pooling beneath it in a macabre baptism. The god's eyes flicker wildly, unfocused and filled with a confusion that borders on madness. They dart from side to side, as if searching for some form of relief, some end to the torment, but finding nothing. Its hands rake at the ground, fingers curling and uncurling in a desperate, jerking movement, the nails forming and cracking and breaking as they scrape against the unyielding earth. Each ragged breath draws in the stench of its own blood, its chest rattling and heaving. The god, nearly formed, is pale yet translucent, veins visible beneath the surface, throbbing with each agonized beat of its budding heart. Its body quivers, flesh writhing as it struggles to solidify, each nerve alight with an unbearable sensation, an overload of stimuli that sends it spiraling deeper into a state of madness. You can almost hear its silent plea for release, its mouth gaping in wordless agony, a cry for mercy that echoes only in the space between its fractured thoughts. Every cell in its body is at war, each one resisting the painful emergence into being. The spasms seem unending, a surreal dance of creation and suffering as its body twists upon the raw, bloodied earth. The being's limbs flail, its fingers gouging at the dirt in a futile effort to anchor itself against the unrelenting tide of pain. The sight is both terrifying and awe-inspiring, an immortal essence, dragged from the void and bound to flesh by your very hand. You pour more energy into the roots, forcing them deeper, their tendrils weaving around the god's forming shape, their skin splitting as they grow. Flesh thickens around the god's sinews, veins knitting together in arterial structures. But each new addition only seems to intensify the suffering. The god's keening wail fills the air, a sound that echoes with prehistoric torment. Its body arches, twisting, convulsing as it battles against the torment of its own creation. It claws at its head now, fingers raking through the flesh of its scalp and face, only for it to be quickly regrown. Every nerve that sparks into life, every vein that pulses with blood is another moment of agony, a sensation that comes with existence. The twilight crown, affixed to your right ankle, begins to glow at last, casting an iridescent light over the newborn god. As the body takes form, the twilight energy wraps around it, sealing the raw, pulsing flesh beneath a layer of iridescent scales. The scales shimmer, reflecting the dim glow of twilight, their surface shifting with hues of deep blues, violets, and silver. They quickly and finally seal the god's physical form, protecting it, offering it a fragile sense of wholeness. The god shudders, its breathing slowing, the agony easing as the scales bind its flesh, holding it together against the chaos that still rages within. You feel the crown of fractured infinity wrapped around your left ankle, pulse with temporal energy. Slowly, the power flows into the essence of the god. Time bends, twists, fractures knitting together as the moments that once tore at creation bind themselves to the god's form. It is a painful process, time itself resisting, reality rebelling against the god's very existence. The god's body convulses again, its form flickering, fading in and out of the present as if time itself is trying to reject it. But you persist, feeling the energy twist and grind until finally the god's presence solidifies, a being once born from broken moments, now made complete. The earth groans, the aborted god rising, its body towering, its form cast in colors of twilight and shadow, its gaze piercing, commanding. It reaches out, fingers brushing the fractured earth, and where it touches, life erupts, flowers blooming from the cracks, vines spreading like veins through the sacred land. The god moves slowly, each step heavy and careful, its presence a fusion of grace and raw, untamed power now standing as a symbol of rebirth. You step back, breathless, your hands trembling, the crowns now dimmed, their energy spent. You watch as the god completes its first steps, its presence reshaping the world, filling the air with the promise. It moves with a quiet persistence as it strides across the fractured landscape into a future shaped by hands that refused to let go. In this realm of your own reconstruction, your actions take on a strange cadence, neither tender nor cruel, but imbued with a detached responsibility. You ascend to a god, and you are not a tyrant that some would expect of a creator, nor the savior others might hope for. Instead, you are a force of nature, a quiet, inexorable architect. To care is a luxury you do not entertain. Your concern exists only insofar as it ensures balance. Earth emerges under your hands, a soft and crumbling loam rich with latent potential, indifferent to what might sprout from its depths. Your plants are not acts of artistry, but inevitabilities, coiled vines, heavy with thorns and fruit alike, offering substance and threat in equal measure. Water trickles forth, crystalline and apathetic, carving paths through stone and sand with neither malice nor affection. It does not gush for parched throats, nor hold back for drowning ones. It simply flows. Flesh is a necessity, a medium for the consciousness you have called forth. You weave sinew and bone, binding them together with neither relish nor revulsion. It is functional, utilitarian, and free of embellishment, save for those strange asymmetries that remind you of your imperfect hands. They move, breathe, speak, and die, their vitality an echo of the power you gave and withheld. You watch them grow, not with pride, but with detached curiosity. They stumble, build, love, and destroy with equal fervor, and you feel neither triumph nor despair at their actions. They name you, worship you, revile you, and still you do not intervene. Their struggles are not yours to share. Their victories are not yours to celebrate. Your indifference is not cruelty, but an understanding that their lives must be their own. To a select few, you grant purpose, not out of favoritism, but because purpose is the cornerstone of existence, the force that propels motion in an otherwise still cosmos. These chosen ones take their first steps burdened with the weight of your intentions, destined to carve paths through the worlds. Some transcend the mortal coil, becoming deities in their own right. Most others falter, their flames extinguished by the winds of inevitability. You note these outcomes, but do not linger on them. They are no more tragic than a falling leaf or a crumbling stone. Among them, a few achieve things you could not have anticipated. They seed realms with ideas, forge connections between worlds, and unravel mysteries that even you couldn't solve. Their impact ripples outward, subtle and profound, weaving threads into the ever-expanding tapestry of existence. You do not mourn their passing, though you feel the hollow space they leave behind, like a missing tooth of a gear. It is not grief, but the quiet acknowledgement of what was and what will never be again. And so you continue. Creation is not a passion for you. It is a function, a duty, as necessary as breath. You rebuild, not because you must, but because it is the only answer to ruin that does not court stagnation. In the end, you remain in the center of it all, a constant presence among your creations. Your indifference is a balm to some and a wound to others, but to you, it is simply the way of things. You are not a god of wrath, nor one of mercy. You are the pivotal point upon which existence turns, as unshakable and uncaring as the seasons or the tide. All right, guys, Alias here. That is the end of the first AshenBound novel. I think there will be some editing as I go through and work on it, but I'm going to try to find a publisher for this. I enjoyed writing the story a lot. I had a lot of fun with this. This has actually been a legitimate adventure for me. You guys get 12 hours of content, but I've spent hundreds of hours on this between writing and editing and recording and just looking up like images of what I've written, all kinds of stuff. This is I think this is definitely the biggest thing I've ever written. Let's see what we ultimately ended up with as far as the size of this project goes. So we ended up at 307 pages at size 12 times New Roman single spacing, 109,000 words, 541,000 characters, or 649,000 characters with spaces. We had 1,785 paragraphs, 9,867 lines. That was a lot. Now I have to narrate other stuff and write more things. Nothing to it but to do it.